Good evening, folks, and welcome to the live stream. I hope you're all very well this evening and you had a wonderful week. So what we're going to talk about tonight, well, we're going to cover Prince Andrew first. There's an interesting story that appeared in the BBC. Not a big story, but an interesting one, all the same, I should say. We're also going to cover what's happening with immigration, Labour and the NHS plan, and of course, the Tories and second jobs. I want to talk about that. But before we begin, we have a bit of news because CGM, it's her birthday today. So I have to sing happy birthday. I'm sorry, I have to do this. So if you want to plug your ears for the next 30 seconds, you should do that. So happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, CGM. Happy birthday to you. Hey, okay. Many happy returns, and I hope you have a great night, and I hope something nice is arriving on your birthday. So there, you can unplug your ears if you had your ears plugged for the last 30 seconds. So let's start off with Prince Andrew. So hospital staff disciplined over missing Andrew plaque. So it says here, according to the BBC, staff at a Belfast hospital were disciplined after a plaque marking its formal opening by the Duke of York went missing, according to emails seen by the BBC. The plaque sparked an investigation by health officials after it was removed without permission by Belfast City Hospital, from Belfast City Hospital, I should say, in January 2022. It came after Prince Andrew faced civil action in the US over sexual assault allegations, claims he has denied. The Belfast Trust said the plaque has since been recovered. Staff behaviours were addressed, whatever those behaviours are, and in accordance with the Trust disciplinary procedures, and no decision has been made on reinstating the plaque. So you can see here was the plaque after it was installed in 1986, and there is the plaque today gone. So, I would love to know in what way these staff were disciplined. Please don't do it again, maybe. I hope that's the most of the discipline that they received. They did nothing wrong. You could almost make them heroes, I would say, getting rid of this guy's plaque. His plaque shouldn't be there. It should have been removed a long time ago. Anyway, just wanted to cover this interesting story about what happened in Belfast. Once again, these people are heroes and they should not be disciplined in any way. Okay, moving on. Of course, the main story this week has, of course, been the winter fuel allowance vote in the House of Commons, but also what's happening with the NHS. So there was a report commissioned by West Streeting into the state of the NHS, and the reporting's findings were pretty damning, to put it mildly. Franco Punny, thank you so much for that super chat. Great to see you on the stream. Anyone know of a good cat and dog recipes? Feline, feline rather peckish. Oh my goodness, yes. So anyone who doesn't know, Donald Trump was suggesting that Haitian refugees were in some state eating cats and dogs or something like that. It's hard to keep track of what Donald Trump says because it's all incoherent rubbish. But we'll have to do some investigation into some recipes for Freckle Pony. Thanks so much for that. Bill says, "Don't disrespect the sexual predator." Yes. Let me read some more of your comments. I wasn't doing that, or was here when it happened. I was at the fish and chip shop. Not sure what that's about. Prince Andrew unveiled the plaque at the hospital after undergoing surgery on his sweat glands. Well said, Brad. The video's all over Pirate Bays. I'm not sure what that's about. Going back up. Everyone wishing happy birthday to CGM. My ears will bleed. Yes, Tanya. Don't worry, the singing is over, if you can call it that. Anyway, let's move on to this. So, Tory squandered golden inheritance on NHS, says West Streeting ahead of Sir Keir Starmer's reform or die speech. So this was yesterday. He says, West Streeting told Sky News, Tony Blair's Labour government left the health service with the lowest waiting times and highest patient satisfaction in the history of the NHS. And that's true. Satisfaction in the NHS was at its highest back in 2010, and the waiting list was, I believe, at its lowest at that stage. What's criminal is that in the last 14 years, the Conservatives took that golden inheritance and squandered it, and they don't bear any responsibility. Yes, Mr. Streeting said was speaking after an an independent report he commissioned found the NHS was in a critical condition with record waiting lists and too much of the budget spent in hospitals. Off the back of the investigation, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer will give a speech today, or he gave it on Thursday, in which he will warn the health service must reform or die and set out a 10-year plan to fix it. So yes, Starmer did deliver that speech yesterday where he said that the NHS needs to reform or die. And he also said that any money will be connected to reform. So reforms will have to take place before the NHS gets more money, which is insane because it needs money in order to reform. Of course, changes have to take place. Now, we should get worried when we hear the word reform because many times reform means privatization. But if it's about changing how the NHS operates in order to improve outcomes for patients, and that's an important thing. If it's changing to improve conditions for workers and medical staff, that's a good thing. So reform may not always be a bad thing, but it desperately needs more money, and it needs more money going to the public sector of it, not to the private sector. And this has been a massive problem where the NHS has had to rely on the private sector, which is more expensive, of course, over the last number of years. And we've seen how Theresa May, when she switched she brought the social care under the wing of the NHS, and then just moved the budget from social care into the NHS and did not increase the budget for the NHS to take on that extra load. Brad, thank you so much for that super chat. Currently on holiday on the Isle of Man. I'll let you know if Lady M docks full of a ton of so-called PPE. Yes, Lady Moan. Keep us informed on that, and have a wonderful holiday on the Isle of Man. Hope the weather is good. Ninja, thank you so much for that super chat as well. I saw it on TV. Crazy old uncle Donald Trump. I think it's really damaging. I'll come to this later, but I think it's really damaging his chances here, because it's not so much his base that will get him over the line, it's independence. And I think this type of rhetoric is turning off independence. So, back in 2016, when Trump won the first time, he presented himself as someone different. I'm not the status quo. I'm going to shake things up. I'm not Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton represents the status quo. And, the system needs to be shook up. And I think he won over a lot of independence because he was saying, look, I'm going to change things. But now his rhetoric is not about changing things or improving things for the American people. It's all about him. Some of it is revenge. And I don't think this is going to help him with independence. And the sort of crazy stuff that he's been coming out with over the last few months is really, I think, is turning off independence. Look, I don't want him to win, but I'm trying to be as objective as possible here. But I think independents, who are the most important voter in the US, because it's not your base that will help you win it, that will get you over the line. It's the independents. and you need them. I really don't understand how anyone can be an independent at this stage, but there are some, and it seems they're willing to back Harris over Trump at the moment, unless something happens. They're eating the dogs. Max, do you know about Biden putting on a MAGA hat? I saw a picture, but then I thought it was AI. I thought it was photoshopped, or I thought it was AI. So I did see that picture, but I dismissed it because, there's so much crap on the internet at the moment. I presumed it was Photoshop or AI. Now, by shaking things up, Trump means to rewrite the Constitution. He will not be allowed to do that. No. Max, you have to sing it again for those who missed. No, I'm not singing it again. They can rewind the video. They can go back to the beginning. Anyway, let's get back to this. It says here, giving a flavor of what it could look like. Mr. Streeting said the NHS needed 3 fundamental changes. That include a shift from hospital to community, so people are diagnosed earlier and faster, given greater investment in technology to create a digital NHS and dealing with sickness in society. I think this is important, and I think this is a good approach. I don't know if it's the right approach, but I think it's a good approach, because if you're able to deal with problems before they become chronic, before they become more serious, if GPs have the oh god, people are saying that they missed okay, I will sing it towards the end of the live stream, okay, so that nobody misses it, okay? So maybe one of the moderators can remind me at the end of the live stream to sing it once again, okay? There's no let up of you people. But back to this. So I think it's shifting to the community and away from the hospital, I think is a good approach, because if you're able to free up GPs to be able to view people for a longer period of time than 10 minutes, as we saw before, they're able to understand people's problems better, able to diagnose problems better, and they can provide better health outcomes to people. People can avoid going to hospital if they're treated first by their GP. It could be something minor, it's dealt with quickly, and it doesn't become more serious later on. The big problem at the moment is people are not able to get a GP appointment, or the GP appointment isn't providing them with the necessary care they need. So what's happening is people are going back home and eventually getting sicker. They try to contact the GP, it's closed, or they're not able to take them, so they eventually call an ambulance and they end up in A&E. And it's much more expensive to treat somebody in hospital than for the GP to treat somebody with some simple medication. And we've already covered this before, where people have been, children in particular, have been ending up in hospital to get teeth removed because there isn't an NHS dentist available. So people are ending up in hospital, and that's much more expensive. And of course, it's taking up a bed that's necessary, which could have been resolved, which could have been available, for somebody who, I hate to say really needed it, but actually needed it if they could have had the, how can I say this? I'm all confused tonight. It's the singing. Somebody who rightly needed that bed could have been in it. Instead, it was taken by somebody who had ended up there because they couldn't access the dentist or the GP. Wes Streeting went on to say, that's why today's report was so important, because ironically, although it's looking back on how we got here and diagnosing the illness, it actually helps us look forward and be honest about how we got here. The study carried out by the peer and surgeon Lord Darcy argues the NHS is facing rising demand for care as people live longer in ill health, coupled with low productivity in hospitals and poor staff morale. So these are the core issues here. People are living longer with ill health, so a bigger strain on the NHS. There's low productivity in the NHS, so there's a lot of problems that need to be sorted out. For example, bad systems in place, outdated systems, which is making it more difficult for the staff to carry out the work they need. There are stories of people having their blood test lost, so then it's necessary to do another blood test, and this is an extra cost for the NHS, for example. Or people don't receive them on time, and then they end up getting some sort of condition, or they're not getting the medication they need because they don't have the blood test. So there's a cascading problem where somebody required something simple, because the system is breaking down, they're not getting that simple information, and then they're not able to make a choice, or their health providers are not able to, the NHS or the GP is not able to provide the health care that they need. And then, of course, poor staff morale. Working conditions in the NHS have deteriorated over the last 14 years. And, the unions have been trying to improve the situation for junior doctors, for example, and they were met with a wall of silence from the Conservative governments, not just one. So all of these things have to change. So it's good that one of the first steps was to meet with the junior doctors and to give them a pay restoration, not so much a pay rise, but just a pay restoration. And the other things are going to take longer to improve. New systems cost money. They need to be rolled out. They need to be tested. It needs to be ensured that they're going to work. And ill health in the community requires GPs being able to deal with the problems of patients and being able to speak with patients, because GPs are also burnt out, and many of them are leaving the profession because of the stress levels. Starmer will be gone in 5 years. Yeah, well, I would say well within 5 years. It depends on a number of things. If the economy doesn't start recovering, the Labour Party, and if the Labour Party feels the drag, so if there's a by-election or a number of by-elections, and Labour lose these seats, then there'll be pressure on Starmer to step down, and he will be replaced probably by Angela Rayner. I would imagine Angela Rayner would take over, or maybe Rachel Reeves, but Starmer's not going to be there for 5 years. Like when Boris Johnson won his majority in 2019, people were saying, Boris Johnson's going to be Prime Minister for 10 years. And I said at the time, look, there's a honeymoon period and it doesn't last very long. And I don't know if the recording is still there, but I remember saying back in 2019, 2020, I said, look, Boris Johnson could be gone soon. He's popular, but as soon as they find a replacement, somebody who's better than Boris Johnson, they get rid of him and they put them in place. So Boris Johnson, as soon as he starts to become a drag on the party, they get rid of him. So I was wrong that it wasn't as soon as he became a drag. He was a drag for a long time. It was Partygate in the end that got rid of him. And that was 2 years, more or less, after he became Prime Minister. So Keir Starmer is in a worse position than Boris Johnson, because Boris Johnson was still quite popular during the pandemic. So Keir Starmer could be out before 2 years. Some people are saying Christmas. I don't believe that. No, I'll leave that. I want to move on to, because we're getting close to the halfway point. Just want to cover a couple of stories here which are not directly related to what we're talking about tonight. But this is about, are rich people going to private school, or is it for everyone? Have a listen to this call.
We're not rich. In fact, most people who go to private school would probably argue that aren't really wealthy.
I'm sorry, Ian. I just don't.
We'll go back again.
We're not rich. In fact, most people who go to private school would probably argue that aren't really wealthy.
I'm sorry, Ian. I just don't buy that, I'm afraid. If you're paying private school fees, you're rich.
Yeah.
You are. I'm sorry, but you are. In the context of
well off if I wasn't paying private school fees.
Well, there you go. I mean, there you go. So your choice to pay your money is your choice, but you have the money available to pay for these fees. They are incredibly expensive. I don't need to tell you that. They are incredibly expensive. I'm sorry, but you are rich.
But that doesn't make you rich.
It does. It absolutely does.
We're not.
It does make you rich. Now, rich in a sense is relative. Jacob Rees-Mogg is poor in respect to Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, okay? But he's a lot richer than many people. So it's all quite relative. But if you're sending your kids to a private school, chances are you're much richer than most people in society, because you can afford, you don't have to worry about bills like gas or electricity, because you're able to put enough money aside every year to send your kids to a private school. And most private schools are what? At least £10,000 a year, 20,000. I think it's 40,000 for Eton, is it? So in many cases, it's very expensive. So it's not like you're living hand to mouth or you're just getting by. You're more than that, because you have an extra amount of money set aside every year to pay for private education for at least one child. What if you have two children? It's possible that, are you going to decide, if it's the eldest, they will go to private school and all the others will have to go to state school? Well, that wouldn't be very fair, would it? Max, you have to brush up on your Ulster Scots for Sammy's birthday. Happy birthday to you. I'll have to brush up on my. When is Sammy's birthday? Sammy poster stream for sure. Let me read just some of the other comments. I'm missing them. Didn't anyone find out anything better? They didn't find anyone better than Boris Johnson, amazingly. No, they ended up being stuck with Liz Truss. That was the thing. Emily Thornberry should be the next Prime Minister. That's an interesting position. I would prefer to see Angela Rayner. Max discussing the NHS while we quote Julie Andrews. The cream of the crop, private school kids. Anyway, look, if you're sending your kids to private school, you're richer than most people. Like, it's all, as I said, it's relative. But generally, if you have money set aside more than you need, then you're richer than most people. Most people don't have that. So staying somewhat in that area, the winter fuel allowance. So was it a good idea for the Labour government to modify or reform this policy? Now, let's hear what Politics Joe had to say, and then I'll come back with
the argument for cutting winter fuel payment, or at least making it means tested or targeted and not universal. That Starmer is signalling by basically saying, here is a sacred cow, here is a knife, I'm plunging it into the heart of the cow. Because for so long, government has treated preferentially the elder generation, and I am signalling to all of you now that time's up. And this is the signalling of it is what interests me, because I return again to how infinitesimally small it is as a proportion of public expenditure. It is not a lot of money. I feel like its value is in its symbolism, and how politically damaging and dangerous going after this can be for it. It's not without risk. Their landslide victory was essentially reliant on a number of things, one of which was the Conservative vote not turning out. It was people who traditionally vote Tory staying at home. Doing things like this, kicking the boomer beehive, will mobilise those people to go out and vote Tory.
It's going to save £1 billion for the Treasury. Actually not true, because they're encouraging people to claim pension credit. If everyone who's eligible for pension credit claims it, it wipes out that £1 billion saving.
Does it?
Yes. So it's totally nonsensical.
Yes, it's totally nonsensical. So it doesn't work politically, as was pointed out there. You're kicking the the boomer beehive. So you're going to just encourage older people to come out and vote for the Conservatives next time. So a lot of these Conservatives probably stayed at home during the last election, the recent election, and they're likely to turn out and vote for the Conservatives or Reform UK at the next election. That may happen, that may not happen. See, this is a really difficult issue to respond to, because Labour have actually protected the triple lock, and they've increased funding for pensioners over the last, they're planning to increase funding for pensioners. So on the one hand, they're taking the money away to a certain group of them under this reform. But at the same time, the triple lock is in place. Energy bills are actually going to be slightly cheaper, I think, this year in respect to last year. So pensioners have more money because the triple lock is in place. Bills are a little bit less, but the support they get for some of them, the support some of them are getting, will be gone. But as was pointed out here, if more people sign up to the exemption, then it's going to eliminate the cost. So it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It doesn't make economic sense. It didn't make really any economic sense anyway. It was not going to bring in a lot of money. But politically, it makes no sense unless it is this idea that, yeah, we're going to be tough. So we're going to be tough with pensioners. We're going to be tough with people on benefits next. We're going to be tough with the NHS. We're going to be tough with everything. And it could be, and I mentioned this on the Sunday Rolls, so do check out the Sunday Rolls this Sunday. I did mention that maybe they're trying to get all the bad stuff out of the way first, although I don't know the reason behind they would doing this particular cut, but get all the bad stuff out of the way first, and then in about a year or 2 years' time, they can start increasing public spending. They can start paying something back, but that would rely on growth, and at the moment there is no growth. It's a sign for what is to come, yeah, said our Archangel. This is the only logical conclusion I can come to. You know, Labour are saying we're going to cut a load of stuff. Expect austerity. This is austerity that's coming down the road, and this is the first step towards that austerity. This is a taste of what's to be expected later on. I think this is what they're trying to do. The UK has a bad case of crabs in a bucket. One group can't do well without others pulling them down. Better spending next year won't help the estimated 4,000 who are due to die from the lack of heat this winter. And this is, I mentioned this also on the Sunday roast, that there are a lot of pensioners who may be entitled to these benefits, may be expecting higher energy bills, which may not actually materialize, and they decide to cut off the heating themselves. They decide not to put on the heating, and then they get hypothermia or they get other cold related illnesses, and then they end up in hospital. They end up in A&E, and they have to stay in a bed, and this is going to cost the NHS money. So either way, I think this policy doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't make a lot of sense politically, it doesn't make a lot of sense economically, unless it's about, let's start the pain now, and this is going to be an example of the pain. It gets cold up north, I guess. In Scotland, it's going to harm a lot of people, and people are going to die. And as Phil from a different bias, who was on the Sunday roast, you'll see him on Sunday, he pointed out, one person dies, the Sun newspaper will be there saying this is Keir Starmer with blood on his hands. Even if this person was going to die because they didn't put on the heating, it was nothing to do with the cut to the winter fuel allowance. This person, people die every year. 4,000 died last year from the cold. Pensioners died last winter, 4,000. So people will die. But you can guarantee the Sun newspaper or the Daily Mail or the Express will be around someone's house trying to make political hay out of it. You can guarantee that. Oh my God, is there buffering? Please no. Why can't the government just do a wealth tax? This would hopefully fix most of that. It would. I honestly... The only possible conclusion you can come to that they're not doing a wealth tax is because they don't want to damage their donors, because some of the donors are very rich people. They don't want to be seen as being too left-wing, because a wealth tax, I support a wealth tax. Let me put my cards on the table here. I fully support a wealth tax. There are people who have made billions, hundreds of billions over the last number of years, especially during the pandemic. Those people need to be taxed. Those people have massive amounts of wealth, and they need to be taxed in order to recoup some of that cost. What happened to the idea of clawing back some of the fraud over the PPE contracts and some of the fraud related to the bounce back loans that Rishi Sunak issued in 2020? So there's no mention of that anymore. I hope it's taking place behind the scenes. So there's a huge amount of money that could be clawed back. What about Michelle Mould, for example? I know she's under investigation. Well, a number of people who receive PPE contracts, they should be investigated. And if they're found to have been found guilty, they should have to sell their assets to return the money. Get your quilts and blankets out. We've had no heating in the 1960s, only an open fire. The ice was on the inside of the house. I know we're going to hear a lot of those stories. And we didn't have an indoor toilet. We had one outside, and we all went at the same time or something to keep warm. Hey, make being cold more fun by calling it a cold snap sandwich. Oh yes, the dark humor is going to take over the live stream. So we're about halfway through the stream, so I'm going to take a short comedy moment. I hope you will enjoy this, and it's a familiar voice you should hear.
Colin from Portsmouth is on the line.
Well, what have we here? Two British heavyweight titans meeting for the first time. Colin from Portsmouth and James O'Bleeding Bryan. Listen, I've been forced to listen to your pathetic woke nonsense, and let me tell you this, you make me sick. You are the epitome of the lefty, liberal, goo-pudding, ramekin-hoarding, metropolitan elite, sitting in your little ivory chair, speaking over brave, right-leaning callers so they're not allowed to tell the nation why Brexit was such a good idea. Crushing listeners' arguments, using their own logic against them. It's disgusting. You are what is wrong with this country. I bet you don't even care that the National Trust is becoming a Sharia kingdom that forces its poor, unsuspecting customers to have scones without any dairy products in. You might as well take your middle name out, yeah? Replace the O with Ules. James Ules Bryan. Because that is how much of an enemy you are to this country. I bet you're on a secret WhatsApp group with Carol Vorderman and Gary Bloody Lineker, aren't you? Plotting with Keir Starmer to get into the House of Lords and make it law to buy your book. Oh, you'd love that, wouldn't you? If we had to pay a licence to watch the BBC and to read your book, you're now the king of radio just because every single caller to your show since 2016 is too frightened to give you one positive of leaving the EU in case they're locked up for free speech. Well, I hope you're happy because you are destroying this once great country from the inside. Anyway, James, I've had a lovely time. Thank you so much for having me on. Love to the family.
Love to the family, Colin. I heard you're on tour at the moment. Are there any tickets still available?
Oh, you'd love that, wouldn't you? If you could come and ruin my tour at Leicester Square Theatre on 2nd of October and elsewhere around the country until October the 12th, I'm not having it. Not having it. But yeah, tickets are available on socomedy.co.uk.
Oh, Colin. That was good.
It has winter. It has.
Okay, so has Rachel Reeves damaged Labour morale? This is from the New Statesman, Andrew Marr.
It's fuel, it has pensioners, and it has cut. There is no more emotive cluster of words that you could possibly imagine. How do organisations like Age Concern and Crisis, how do they operate? Are they effective? Do they come onto the Today programme and other broadcasters rather effectively? They do. What about what the broadcasters and the newspapers going to do? Are they going to find pensioners literally shivering? Yes, they are. All those things have to be factored in. And I do think there's a certain naivety that they have just brought it out as a standalone measure and then forced everybody through the lobbies to support it.
Let's take a look at intertwined, actually, two big political stories of the week. George, you kick us off because it's our cover story of the week, Rachel Reeves' great gamble, and this is, of course, about the winter fuel allowance being taken away. It's not going terribly well, is it?
No. So I think there are some who are drawing the sort of premature conclusion that all's fine because they got through the parliamentary vote. Only one Labour MP voted against. That's John Trickett, the veteran left-winger. There were about a dozen unlicensed abstentions. So, on the surface, comfortable majority. But I think the real test of this policy is yet to come. To state the obvious, winter fuel payments cuts will get even more attention as we get closer to winter. The papers will be filled with stories of pensioners having to choose between heating and eating, or even worse, freezing to death. And MPs' inboxes will continue to be flooded with people saying, I'm a lifelong Labour voter, I never thought you'd do this, I feel betrayed. Ministers have been sort of assailed in supermarkets by angry voters.
And this is going to be a big problem for the new MPs, because a lot of the new MPs have not the experience with how to deal with angry constituents. So, and Phil from A Different Bias mentioned this during the Sunday roast. What happened in 2019 was Labour lost a lot of MPs. They lost a lot of seats. But this year, they won back a massive number of seats. And you're going to end, and a lot of the MPs who did win their seats are not people with a lot of experience. So there's going to be a bit of chaos in the Labour Party, because you're going to have a lot of MPs who are receiving a lot of pressure from their constituents about, for example, the winter fuel allowance. You voted for this. Why did you vote for this? I'm going to freeze. I'm not going to vote for you anymore. I voted for you to get out the Tories. Look at what you've done to me. I'm not going to vote for this Labour Party ever again. I'm going to punish you at the next election. Now, some of these letters may be legit. Some of these letters may be fake. But the Labour MP will have to make a decision. And I've said this before, some of the Labour MPs who have won their seats are sitting on very thin majorities. And they're going to be putting pressure on the government to do something. So this has passed, so there's not much they can do about that. But as we go through this parliament, you're going to see big rebellions, because MPs are starting to see pressure being applied to them by their constituents to do something, to vote a particular way. And if they're wet behind the ears, if they're new MPs, they're not going to know how to deal with these types of crises. They may rely on the chief whip, they may rely on the party structure, but at the end of the day, they are going to be the ones who will have to speak to constituents. And one thing is sending a letter to someone, another is sitting in a community centre receiving abuse from constituents, or in the supermarket or on the street. These MPs, a lot of them didn't want to vote for this policy, but they had to vote for it because there was there's no point speaking to the constituents saying, look, I'm sorry, I voted for this because if I didn't, I'd lose the whip. They don't care about that. They care about whether their family will be able to heat their home, whether their elderly parent or relative will heat their home. And if they die, they're going to blame, whether this person died of natural causes, whether they died because they didn't turn on the heat, even though they could access the benefits, the blame will be laid at the door of the government. In the same way, I think, what happened with Partygate, where people were not able to attend funerals. They saw Boris Johnson having a shindig in the House of Commons, in number 10. This rubbed people very much the wrong way. And there's a possibility that something like this could happen to the Labour Party, that they'll take a massive hit. Now, politics is fleeting in the sense that, we won't be talking about this next week because it's past. But as this journalist pointed out, when winter comes, when winter arrives, we will be probably talking about this again. But after winter, we will be talking about something else. But the families who've lost loved ones will remember this. So this is, once again, this policy doesn't make any sense economically or politically. Alistair, thanks so much for that super chat. Max, that's why a lot of the 50 abstained. 3 ask the whip against the whip because they should be unselected by the constituency. They would be unselected by the constituency. Yes, so there's a risk that you lose the whip. It was 50. Yeah, was it 50 that abstained? 3 asked the whip because they would be unselected by the constituency. I think to be unselected by the constituency, you need to have broken the rules in Parliament or done something illegal. So I don't think they would have been unselected by the constituency. That's the way that Nigel Farage can't be removed by his constituents, unfortunately. If I'm understanding your point correctly. I'm back. What did I miss? Would those people have lived longer if they had heating? It's an easy excuse for some to use to justify removing the winter fuel allowance. Yes. Look, once again, I think it was a very bad idea, both politically and economically, and it is going to come back to harm Labour, if not in the short term, in the medium term.
I think politically it's going to be very difficult. But as I said in the piece, Rachel Reeves has no option now, in her view, and I understand the logic, to press ahead with this. Because if she U-turns on this, which has become this sort of totemic measure, her whole programme is in doubt. Can she really get through the tax rises and spending cuts, potentially further welfare cuts, that she says she needs to do to stick to her fiscal rules? And
so she's painted herself into a corner. So she has to go ahead with this.
To turn the economy around.
Andrew, do you think it's been a huge mistake?
I think the way they've done it has been a huge mistake. I think there are ways of mitigating, which have been much discussed, involving council tax bans and other wheezes, which would have meant that 1.6 million really poor pensioners could have been protected. I think this was thrust at Rachel Reeves by the Treasury senior officialdom, who've been trying to get this measure through under the Conservatives. They went again. And
okay, ultimately, who is responsible? Is it the Chancellor or is it the civil servants? Because if the civil servants are saying you should be doing this, she has to understand, because she has to sign the dotted line. She has to stand behind this. She has to take responsibility for it. So the civil servants can present whatever they want, but if she goes along with it, it'll be her head on the chopping block. It will be her who'll face the music, not them.
And again to Jeremy Hunt, said, great idea, Chancellor, and he said, not on my Nelly. And then she came in and took it up straight off the table. So I think the way it's been done has been poor, and I think George is absolutely right.
Is this showing weakness within the new government when it comes to Rachel Reeves? Does this show a massive amount of weakness on the side of Rachel Reeves, that the civil service were able to tell her, look, the Treasury were able to say, look, let's push through this policy, and she went along with it? The Tories said, no, we're not going along with this. This is economically, politically toxic. And then Rachel Reeves goes, yeah, I'll go with that. Did she not balance, okay, what will be the political cost? What will be the economic benefit?
I think one thing I'd add to is I think the big question is really about the budget itself. Has this undermined Rachel Reeves's authority inside the party and inside Parliament to the point where some of the things that she was planning to do in the budget she pulls back from? I think we don't know at this stage, of course, but we have a very, very upset Labour Party. I was in the chamber for all of this, and I wouldn't say the mood was rebellious or angry. I thought the mood was beaten down. They were sort of sad, unhappy, bemused, confused, genuine.
This is because it's new. This is because they're a new party. They were not expecting something like this. You will see a change in the future. So a lot of people were afraid that they would lose the whip. So they begrudgingly voted for this. They were grumbling and upset. But later on later on in this Parliament, you will see a very different Labour backbenchers. You will see groups form, and they will be much more robust in their disagreement with the government. And if they're able to form coalitions, if they're able to form groups, they're going to say to the party, no, well, if you sack one of us, you're going to have to sack all of us. And if they grow to a significant size, like we saw with the ERG. The ERG were dictating how Brexit policy to Theresa May. They were dictating policy to Boris Johnson. Both prime ministers were were always looking over their shoulder at the ERG. So you could have something like that within the Labour Party, a significant bloc where they would all agree, of course, and they would say, look, if the government want us to do something, well, they'll have to have us on board, and we will vote against it. And if they have a significant number, of course, the government would be afraid to lose its majority. So, while Starmer looks strong, he's strong now, and it's not guaranteed that he will remain strong in the future. At the moment, he's strong, yes, within the Labour Party. He's tough. He's able to get his way, but that's not guaranteed for in the medium term and long term. Okay, guys, I want to move on to another story here. As I said, this story is sort of going to disappear for a while, but it will come back in winter. So this is a story that I covered a little bit earlier on today. Low-skilled migrant workers cost taxpayers more than £150,000 each by the time they reach state pension age. Political commentator Russell Kirk, the left argument that we need migrants to do the jobs to shore up the economy is bogus. All right, let's respond.
Let's talk very quickly before our first break about this fact that this new report is quite incredible. It's not incredible, it's very credible. Incredible that it's actually being released, given that stuff like this has been buried for decades. Low-paid migrant workers are an immediate drain on the public purse. They cost taxpayers more than £150,000 per head by the time they hit state pension age, and that's according to the Office for Budget Responsibility. Now, I remember...
No, it's not exactly from the Office of Budget Responsibility. This is the Telegraph cherry-picking data. And what they're doing is they're looking at, okay, how much does it cost for a migrant if this migrant does not change from the beginning of their time in Britain to the end of their life? And they said this costs 150,000. Now, it doesn't include anything about what the actual contribution the migrant would add to the economy. For example, buying stuff or buying services and buying products. And it doesn't take into account the idea that they would change during their life. So, for example, many migrants, when they arrive, they don't speak English very well. They do an English course, they improve their skills, they get a better paid job. Maybe some of them save a lot of money, not today, but maybe in the past they saved a lot of money and they were able to buy their own house or buy a couple of houses, as is the case with some migrants. What they'll do is they become a landlord. They will accumulate wealth. Whether these are good things or not is another thing. But in many cases, they're not going to remain static in their earnings. Their earnings will go up and down like anyone else. But in many cases, their wages will increase, their income will increase throughout their life.
Remember, about a year ago, the OBR came out and pointed out, actually, that the vast majority of people coming over to this country weren't necessarily net contributors to the economy. They had as many economically inactive people as the native population. And apparently, if various migrants, the low-paid ones, live to the age of 80, they cost £500,000, £1 million if they live to 100. But by contrast, and this is the bit that should stick in everyone's craw,
this is an interesting. So she's talking about, well, they cost $1 million if they live to 100. Well, what about British people or native people, as they like to say? If they live to 100, then obviously they're costing the taxpayer a lot of money. They're actually costing a British person living to 100 is costing more than a migrant living to 80. Isn't that interesting? Costs a lot more. Are these people arguing for people to have some sort of cut-off period in their life? Was it Logan's Run instead of 30? Was it in the film 30 where they ended up killing people off? Maybe it would be at 80 because it's too expensive for people to live over the age of 80. Is this what Talk TV is advocating for? Or is it just migrants that's the problem?
Average British-born worker boosts public finances by £280,000 by the time they reach state pension age, and that's even once you've taken out education and health spending before they start work. So this will put
this is not obviously averages. This is cherry picking. So a particular group, because logically it doesn't make sense. And I've covered this in another video. It doesn't make sense if you're comparing, for example, someone in their 60s, okay, a migrant or a British person. How is it possible that the migrant would cost more than the British person? Because the migrant, if they arrived at the age of 18 or 25, I think it was, according to this report, a huge part of their life is taken out of the equation. So let's say 18. For the first 18 years, what are you doing? Well, you're going to school. Who's paying for that? Is the British taxpayer paying for migrants at school? No, because if they haven't arrived in the country, obviously you're not paying for them. What about children when they're born? You need a pediatrician. You need them to be in hospital for a few days, maybe, before they're returned, they're released home. Pregnancy, postnatal care, that's a cost that's taken away if the migrant arrives at the age of 18. And this is not picking sides, this is not political, this is just counting, okay? Education, so preschool, elementary school, middle school, high school, whatever education system we're talking about, if somebody arrives at the age of 18, you've eliminated all of that. So how is it possible if we're comparing like for like? Now, of course, right-wing talk TV is not comparing like for like. They'll probably take a high-end, high-earner British person and compare it to a low-wage migrant and presume that the migrant is going to stay on that low wage from 18 to 60.
Basically saying that the average British-born worker is adding to the coffers by £280,000, while the average low-paid migrant is taking from the public purse by £150,000.
Yes, so this is not new news. You and I have talked about this a lot. The fact that we have a thing called GDP, which is effectively the value of the British economy. That has been flattish over many, many, many years. It's growing a little bit. We've actually had news this week that in July, for instance, where the latest figures are available, the economy didn't grow at all. When you then look at GDP per person, per capita in Britain, it has declined significantly over the last 10 years or so. So we are getting poorer. We look like we're getting richer by a bit, but per person, because of course we have net migration into the UK, 7...
No. Why are you jumping to this conclusion? You're saying GDP per capita is declining, so it's because of immigration. How is it because of immigration? You're not making a connection here. You have to provide evidence that GDP per capita is down because of immigration. Now, economists would say it's because of a lack of investment. The UK government has not invested enough. It has not attracted enough investment. That is probably why GDP per capita is down. They also mention how the workforce is sicker than in the past. So this is going to impact GDP per capita. So if more people are on a waiting list and not working, are they going to be productive? Are they going to be more productive, less productive? I presume they're going to be less productive. So if you have a lot of people on a waiting list not working, they're going to affect productivity. If the UK government is not able to attract investment like before, this is going to impact productivity. If wages have been stagnating, this is going to impact productivity. But it's easy just for right-wing media just to say, well, the problem is migrants. Okay, they've been using this argument for the last 20 years. If we leave the European Union, we'll be able to fix this. If we bring down immigration, we'll be able to fix this. And once again, it's just the same tired arguments. Foreigners are the problem. Immigrants are the problem. If we leave the EU, this will fix them. Oh, it didn't actually fix the problem. Okay, if we leave the European Convention on Human Rights, that will fix the problem. Oh, wait a minute, it probably won't. If we have fewer migrants, this will fix the problem. Actually, we need migrants, as was pointed out in chat by... I saw the comment and then I didn't get a chance to read it. It's gone now. But as was pointed out in chat, we need migrants because many sectors are struggling to find the workers they need. The NHS, 150,000 staff short. Now, the solution is what? train up 150,000 staff. Well, where are you going to get the money for that? These people don't grow on trees, okay? The money doesn't grow on trees, we keep being told. So if you want to, let's say even if you did have the money, it takes time to train up these people. Are you going to have a crumbling NHS until you have the staff you need trained up? A GP takes 6, 7, 8 years to train at a massive cost. If you bring in migrant, I'm not saying this is the perfect solution, but if you bring in a migrant doctor, this person has already been trained up. Another country has paid for the training. There is maybe some extra training to be done, recognition of qualifications, of course, these are all important things. But most of the cost has been burdened by another country. So how can that person not be a net contributor? Wait, Max is what I said. Sorry, unknown user. Yes, apologies. I missed your previous comment. Max, we need migrants of this country. Where to do the people. Sorry, to have people to work and evenings. Most don't want to do any of that. Thought works. Tough works. I think I'm reading it correctly. So yes, most people don't want to do the types of job that most migrants are doing. Delivery jobs, picking fruit and vegetables in fields. There was a time when students would do it. It was seasonal work, but the industry has changed, and you need more people to do all types of jobs. For example, on a farm, a lot of the work in abattoirs or in processing centers. Processing plants, people don't want to. British people, native people, the same in Europe, same in the US. A lot of the so-called native population don't want to do these jobs. They don't believe they would prefer higher paid jobs, higher skill, as they would say, higher skilled jobs. And not that they are higher skill, but just for the sake of argument here. So they're going to prefer to do other types of jobs, but these jobs have to be done. There's also a moral question about taking young, educated and ambitious people from developing countries where they're needed more. Yes, I agree 100%, Archangel. This is there is a moral question here about a brain drain taking place in the country where the doctors are needed, and a sort of nicking or stealing doctors, nurses, engineers, qualified people, professionals from poorer countries to work in your country. And this is something that the NHS has looked into, and this is the NHS takes on board. They're not of the idea of poaching staff from other countries, but in some cases they have to. We need the doctors. We can't train them up here. We're going to have to take them from abroad. And unfortunately, that's the reality of the situation. I think we should be training up our own doctors and nurses so we don't have to take people from abroad. One thing about the European Union, people were free to move around, but there's still an onus on the country to train up doctors and nurses themselves. But then once again, that costs a lot of money. And the right wing don't want to spend money on things like that. They certainly don't want to see taxes rise. So these are the same people who will say we shouldn't be hiring immigrants because they're a cost or because they steal British jobs. But at the same time, they would not support higher wages for British people, and they would certainly not support higher taxes to fund training for British people. These people need to be called out. These commentators, politicians, they need to be called out. Do you support higher taxes to fund, for example, training GPs? That has to be the question. Because they'll normally say we're against higher taxes. But if it's for GPs, yes. Okay, then how much of a higher tax are you willing to pay in order to fund GPs? Put your money where your mouth is. But these people are just charlatans, and they'll say that they support training up British people, but when the rubber hits the road, when they have to actually cough up some cash, they're completely against the idea. Okay, guys, let's move on from one group of Tories to another group of Tories. Murdoch meets Jenrick and Badenoch Murdoch meets Jenrick and Badenoch as Tory leadership rivals bid for approval. Oh, God. So Rupert Murdoch has moved on from Keir Starmer to the Tories. Conservative leadership frontrunner Robert Jenrick's campaign has enjoyed a boost after he was invited to meet Rupert Murdoch when the media tycoon was in London to oversee a takeover deal the eye can reveal. Jenrick, who currently has the most support among Conservative MPs, met the media tycoon on Thursday last week for around 45 minutes, according to industry sources. He also saw the editors of The Sun, The Times, and their Sunday sister titles. Why does this charlatan, this, can I say scumbag? Rupert Murdoch have so much influence in British politics? Why is it that politicians run to him for his seal of approval? Like, I understand on the surface why this is so important for politicians, but it's undermining democracy. Why should Rupert Murdoch have more influence over politicians than, for example, 100,000 voters? But that's the reality. They go there to kiss the ring. Please support me in my endeavour to become leader of the Conservative Party. Please support me in my endeavour to become Prime Minister. Oh, great Rupert Murdoch. Please have your minions at The Sun, The Times, whatever other newspapers, throw me a bone or throw me a bit of support. Palpatine meets his new apprentices. Yes, so as said Freckle Punny, it is the case. Murdoch is Wayland Yutani's father. As an Alien fan, I really do appreciate that. Kiss the ring or kiss something. I don't know. I'm trying to have it as family show as possible. Yeah, it's disgraceful. Okay, want to move on to our final story for tonight because we're almost out of time. Second jobs. Should MPs have second jobs?
Now, the thing about MPs doing outside jobs is that when people run for election, especially when they run for election in marginal seats, they say to the voters, I will work for you. I promise you, I will be a dedicated MP. I will be up in the House.
So, why did it do that? Okay, I'll go back. So I wound up doing that. Brad. Oh my God, Brad, that's probably your worst super chat ever. Murdoch is so wrinkly, it's hard to tell where his ring begins. That's absolutely. My mind has melted. Oh God. Thank you so much, Brad. That was wonderful. Thanks so much for that. Anyway, let's get back to this.
Now, the thing about MPs doing outside jobs is that when people run for election, especially when they run for election in marginal seats, they say to the voters, I will work for you. I promise you, I will be a dedicated MP. I will be up in the House of Commons challenging the government and holding them to account as your MP. I will be doing my casework and helping you with my problems. They do not say, I'm also going to earn sackloads of money doing something which is nothing to do with being your MP. It's perfectly possible for MPs to do loads of broadcasting when they're MPs, which is really important for MPs to be on the media and on pods and everything like that, without actually being paid for it. Because I was all over the media for 40 years, but I wasn't paid for it. I did it like part of my job, because the other thing is you don't want conflicts of interest. You don't want Nigel Farage saying things in the House of Commons in order to get more headlines, in order to drive viewers to his show on GB News.
Well said, and that's Nigel Farage's whole point. Now, a few things to say about this. Look, we keep hearing about how MPs are overworked, overstressed. They have too much of a workload. They're having to attend so many meetings. They're having to respond to so many requests from constituents that they don't have any downtime, that they don't have any time to spend with their families, and that they leave politics in order to spend time with their families. Okay, that's the normal excuse. then how can somebody justify having an extra job? In the case of Nigel Farage, 3 days a week, 3 evenings a week. How can he justify that? And also spend time, in the US with his friend, the Agent Orange. Like, how can he justify those things when he's supposed to be working his fingers to the bone? So it's two possibilities. He's lying, or he's lying. And when it comes to Nigel Farage, well, it's obvious that he's lying. He's making more money as a media guy than he is as an MP. And I think what's her name here? Harriet Harman, yes, pointed out perfectly here that somebody like Nigel Farage will make a statement in the House of Commons in order to respond to that statement or to further that statement on GB News. He's in the House of Commons to boost his profile. I've been saying that from the beginning. I don't know what the hell the people of Clacton were expecting Nigel Farage to do on their behalf. What were they hoping for him to achieve? Some of them may have thought he was going to become Prime Minister or something. But did anyone honestly believe that he would represent his constituents? He would be asking about potholes, or he would be talking about a hospital in the area or something like that. Maybe once in a blue moon, but it was mainly about him promoting himself and promoting where his money is, GB News. So I think Harriet Harman is onto something here when she says, look, what he's doing is he's in the House of Commons making a hullabaloo and then using that to grab clicks to get drive traffic to his channel on GB News. And then if he's showing rising figures on GB News, then he can go to his bosses in the show at the end of the year and say, look, you need to pay me more money. See, I'm driving traffic to GB News, so I need to be paid more. So the longer he stays in Parliament, the more trouble he causes, the more GB News make money out of it. So this is a conflict of interest. Ask one of his wives, says Peter. I think that's in reference to Rupert Murdoch. Vicky, great to see you on the stream. Thank you so much. That's your project. Great to see you once again. GP struggling to find jobs while patients are crying out for appointments, says College. 6 out of 10 job-seeking GPs have struggled to find a vacancy to apply for over the past year. Yes, this is the insanity of the situation, where qualified GPs want to work, but there are no surgeries taking them on board. I think it's related to the cost. The surgeries can't afford them. So the surgeries need money from the NHS, or they need money from the state, but they can't afford to take on GPs. So they may have one GP when they need actually 2 or 3. So that you have an insane situation where GPs can't get hired because there isn't the money to employ them. And there are patients who are saying, look, I've been waiting all morning to get a GP appointment, and I've been waiting for ages to actually see the doctor, and I need treatment. And if I can't get the treatment, I'll have to go to the NHS. I'll have to go to, A&E. And then this creates another problem, as I pointed out before. Thanks so much, Vicky. And this, it's just insane, and it's going to take a long time to fix, because GPs can't be created overnight, but those who are still waiting to be employed, they're going to have to wait for the surgeries to. I think it's the surgeries that are the stumbling block here. They need more money to hire GPs. Lee Anderson insulting that lady over this very issue. What a bastard! Yeah, he was trying to defend the idea that there's no conflict of interest, or that he can do 2 jobs at the same time. Once again, it comes back to this. I thought they were overworked. If your MP is running a TV show, what sort of message does that send to the constituent? Like, I sent Nigel Farage an important email yesterday. I didn't receive a response, but I see him on GB News tonight. Like, how can someone who voted for him still support him after that? He's not responding to my request, but he's on GB News complaining about, his bank account, his luxury bank account or whatever. So guys, we're almost at the end of the stream. So I promised I would do it before we finish for tonight. So to CGM, once again, I feel terrible. I feel terrible doing this, but I was pressured. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, CGM. Happy birthday to you. Yay. Okay. God, make it stop. Yes. So hopefully you that noise will clear from your mind as I post this final for the show tonight. Remember to check out the Sunday roast this Sunday. We have a special guest, Phil from A Different Bias, so do check that out. And I hope you enjoy this. So have a wonderful weekend. But before we go, enjoy this one for the road.
As Kamala Harris and Donald Trump faced off in a crucial presidential debate in Philadelphia, British people interested in politics sighed and said, "At least we still know who the baddies are in this one." Our tough choices, grim news, and at least we don't have him correspondent Jonathan Goodenough has more. Yes, that's right. As the reality of Labour being in government sets in, centre-leftish people across the UK have put out a statement saying that they've decided to focus on American politics for a bit. Oh look, there's Taylor Swift with a cat. Have they completely given up on British politics? Not quite, but the arguments over the winter fuel payments have certainly left many people facing tough decisions. Such as? Well, do they accept that cutting this benefit is one way of clawing back some money from richer pensioners to help fill a financial hole left by the previous government? And do they accept that the rising the state pension will go some way to mitigate the effects for poorer people? Or do they shrug their shoulders, say they're waiting to see what happens in the budget, and add that nobody said it would be easy, right? Or do they throw their hands up in the air, agree that Labour are just as bad as the Conservatives, and change hashtag Tories out to hashtag Starmer out? All tough decisions. Although perhaps not quite as tough as a pensioner deciding whether or not to put the heating on in a cold snap. Indeed. So you can see why for many people, they've decided to forego those decisions and instead focus on what's happening in the States. It's just easier. Why? One word. Donald Trump. He's just so obviously loathsome that they can comfortably cheer for the other side. So obviously loathsome that the race is still neck and neck. Yes, that's also an advantage. They can roll their eyes about those crazy Americans and the dangers of the Electoral College to their heart's content, whilst not having to think about things like the Royal Prerogative or the House of Lords. Did they watch the full debate live? Unlikely, as it was on well after bedtime for all but the most committed fan of Pod Save America, but they will have chuckled at the social media clips afterwards, especially the one about immigrants eating dogs. And will the debate make much of an impact? Well, Kamala Harris clearly had a better night, as evidenced by the fact that Trump has said he will not debate her again. But will it have an effect on the polls? Who knows? After all, we are talking about those crazy Americans. So what will these British people do after November? Well, then there's bound to be an election in France featuring the far right, and it's also easy to know who the baddies are in that one. Next up, as the government introduces a bill to end no-fault evictions, we speak to a Tory MP and landlord who says that he considers voting Labour to be a big fault.
Very good from Matt once again. So we have a super chat there at the end from Peter. I look forward to my birthday in March. Are you sure? Are you sure you want to hear me sing once again? You know, I've threatened it a number of times. We have another one from Vicky. Thank you so much, Vicky. Once again, my birthday is the 25th of September, so you can get ready, Max. I'll be I'll be practicing for the 20. You'll have to remind me because my memory is terrible. Thanks so much, Vicky, and thanks so much, Peter. So have a great weekend, guys. Do check out the Sunday roast on Sunday, and if I don't see you then, I'll see you on Tuesday, same bad time, same bad channel. Once again, thanks to everyone who came on. Thanks for your super chats. Thanks for your support. Thanks for smashing the like button. Thanks to the moderators for doing a wonderful job. And once again, happy birthday to CGM.